Up next, the intriguing first stage day
One
one.
of the most surprising things was the information that Kylie Ryan, Lori's daughter, her blood was
News
found on.
Nation did an excellent job here. Credit definitely goes to News Nation and Banfield for getting the scoop in this case. But the pickaxe is just unbelievable when you ponder the fact that that shed that was located on the Daybell property had been searched many times, and they had no idea, what was actually there that was kind of buried behind there. And you find out there's this pickaxe, and the pickaxe, right? And this is why I've been pointing out, folks, all the way throughout. There are elements of this that feel like it came out of the Twilight TV series, so to speak, because that pickaxe ends up having the actual DNA on it, and that means the blood and DNA of Tylee Ryan. So here we go. Let's go ahead and listen in.
What? She texts, he can't do anything right. The night that Tammy Daybell shot at. Now we find out JJ and Tammy were both asphyxiated. And those poor jurors, they had to be exposed to the remains of those children, the pictures of the remains shown in court. Just horrible. Joining me outside that court, outside the Ada County Courthouse, is Lauren Mathias, host of the Hidden True Crime Podcast, and Gigi McKelvey, host of Pretty Lies and Alibis. They have diligently sat through all of this testimony. Lauren, I'm going to start with you. We also got a shopping list of what Lori was buying to prepare for her beach wedding on the account of her dead husband. What'd you learn?
Oh my goodness, yeah. Not only did we learn that she was shopping for a beach wedding dress, we also learned that they had a thing for Malachi. When I say they, I mean Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow, the two who got married on the beach in Hawaii. And we were searching for wedding rings made out of malachite.
Rings made out of
Men's
malachite.
linen shirt and men's linen
Wow.
pants and a bathing suit so that the vacation would be complete.
The plot
She's buying
thickens.
her soon-to-be husband's linen outfit for the beach wedding while his wife is still alive. Jurors are not going to like that. They're not going to like it one bit. So Gigi, here's the big question, and it is massive. It might be the only question. What's missing? What did these prosecutors not tell this jury in this opening that connects Lori to the murders or to a conspiracy?
Wow.
I mean, that's a loaded question. I think that they can't bring in the prior bad acts. And I think the fact that Charles was murdered by her brother Alex was missing because there's going to be a lot of questions about this dynamic. How did Charles die? They're not going to know this. So I think that's missing, but it can't come in. Also, I just really feel like the openings were very short. I was surprised, actually. But I think, too, it was smart in this case. There's so many players, so many different people that are associated. You can't throw that into openings because you overwhelm and confuse the jury. So I think the way they're staggering it a bit is maybe the best route to go with how convoluted this case is.
It's a heck of a story to tell. Okay, real quickly, Lauren, Larry and Kay were both in the courtroom, and from what I gather,
Okay, here we
they
go.
both had their eyes fixed on Lori. Can you describe it?
Yeah, they did. In fact, Gigi was actually in the courtroom today. I was in the remote viewing area. I'll be in the courtroom tomorrow. It's a toss-up. The seats get taken so quickly. What? I've heard the same thing. What did you see?
Yeah, so Lori doesn't hesitate to make eye contact with any of the witnesses. So far today was Kay Woodcock, who is the grandmother of JJ, the sister of Charles Vallow, and then Brandon Boudreaux, who is the ex-husband of Lori's niece, who was in this group. There was one time where Kay was on the stand. They go to a sidebar, and Lori's a little awkward at the table by herself, and Kate was just looking at her, staring at her, not even blinking. And at one point, I think Lori made eye contact with her. Then she diverted her eyes over to the sidebar and was watching the attorneys over there. But, Kate let her know that she wanted to be seen. And then I saw Nate Eaton from East Idaho News had tweeted out that Larry Woodcock said that Lori made eye contact with him 8 or 9 times. So she's not afraid to look at these people. When Brandon Boudreaux was walking in, She watched him from the minute he walked into the door until he was sworn in and took the stand. And then when he had to identify her for the record, it looked to me from where I was sitting, they made eye contact directly. So you have to wonder, how does she feel with all these family members that she hasn't seen since she's been arrested now? Seeing these pictures that we saw today and hearing these things about her, it has to be very awkward. You'd love to climb inside her head, but then again, maybe you would.
Also, super telling that her own son, Colby Ryan, was not present. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find new.
One of the main articles, and also Sun UK, and Sun USA, of course. Cult queen Lori Vallow struts in a bikini in a video from 2004. Mrs. Texas pageant honorary scholar says she tried to reduce bail over her missing kids. Lori Vallow was known as a beauty queen who competed in the Mrs. Texas pageant before she was known as the official cult mother, accused of murdering her 2 children. A video from her beauty queen days shows and reveals Miss Vallow, whose last name was Ryan at the time, performing and strutting in the 2004 beauty pageant. So she was a major beauty queen, apparently, and swimsuit model, and all these things. But Lori Vallow couldn't stay away from the cash. It was very, very alluring to her, and allegedly they had planned for years this interesting trip that ends up occurring. This trip where they go literally off to Hawaii. Now, I don't know if anyone can imagine something like this in any stretch of when it comes to daily events. But literally, directly after both J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan were sadly and tragically done away with, Lori Vallow, the alleged beauty queen, who was wearing this, something like a $6,000 ring and so on, they also claim, she went on an extravagant trip with Chad Daybell all the way over to Hawaii, near the Honolulu Islands. This right after both of her kids had just disappeared. Is one of the ultimate ironies in this case. Investigators would then make a horrifying discovery on June 9th of 2020. Quite a while after J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan had disappeared. And they decided to serve a search warrant at the Salem, Idaho home of Lori Vallow's new husband, Chad Daybell. In the backyard, among a very secluded area, police found 2 sets of human remains buried in shallow graves that were soon confirmed to belong to Tylee, Ryan, and J.J. Vallow. In the video from the pageant, Vallow performed a line dance with other Miss Texas contestants at the beginning of the show, clad in a short skirt and red cowboy boots, apparently. At the time, she was named Lori Ryan, they say, because she was married to her 3rd husband, Jason Ryan. So she's had more than... I lose track sometimes, folks. You'll have to give me a little bit of a refresher on it, too. But it seems she had more than 4 husbands, allegedly, throughout her career. So as part of the swimsuit portion for the competition, Lori Vallow wore a teal bikini and strutted on the stage in her high heels, apparently. In the 3rd on-stage appearance for the evening, she also wore an evening gown, of all things, and decided to waltz around the stage with her hand on her hip, wearing a white, sparkly evening dress for the rest of the gala. The presenter stated that Lori Vallow was married to Jason Ryan is his name in this case, who also was her daughter, Tylee Ryan's father at the time. At the time, of course, the couple had been married for 3.5 years. She was also described as having 2 children, ages 8 and age 1. The presenter stated that Lori Vallow was recently on the game show Wheel of Fortune, where she won, allegedly $17,000. The Sony Pictures Entertainment Bureau did not immediately respond to the Sun's comments, but confirmed to Crime Online that Vallow was on the show and won $17,500 on a number of occasions. And apparently, she actually worked with the Wheel of Fortune show, which is very interesting. The company declined to provide video or pictures of Vallow on the show, citing the active investigation. However, they later came out anyway, of course. The former beauty queen and her allegedly her fifth husband, Chad Daybell, whom she married just a few weeks after her kids were last seen, are the members of the Doomsday Preparedness Cult, this global cult network. And there she is in her evening gown that came out of Wheel of Fortune. So it has been unbelievable all the way along. The resurfaced clip came as Lori Vallow now faces official homicide charges. Joshua J.J. Vallow, age 7, and Tylee Ryan, age 17, were last seen alive September of 2019. Although her children were last seen in September of 2019, they were not reported officially missing until late November, after J.J. Vallow's grandmother, of course, asked police to do a welfare check. The mother was given 5 days to show if her children were around and to produce them in front of the police at the end of January, and were arrested without incident in Hawaii on a warrant from Idaho after she failed to appear. During her first court appearance in Kauai, Hawaii is what they call it, Lori Vallow smirked as she confirmed that she understood the charges and her rights before the judge set her bail for $5 million. Chad Daybell was taken into custody the same day that the children's bodies and remains were found, including the horribly graphic charred remains, apparently of Tylee Ryan, where they actually discovered a pickaxe, we can report that now, folks, in the shed that had Tylee's DNA directly on it. It's just unbelievable. Really, it's just shocking. And so both he and Lori were later indicted by the grand jury on a number of charges related to the kids' homicide, including first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Lori Vallow's devoted brother, Alex Cox, who she talks about in almost a third-hand fashion, believed himself to be, very superior to others, and he is now seen to be involved in their murder. However, he escaped charges after he died all of a sudden in December of 2019 from what were believed to be natural causes spurred by high blood pressure and blood clots in his lung. Police found the bodies of J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan in June of 2020, a little bit later. Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell have had little to say about the whereabouts of their children since that time. And Tammy Daybell also died officially of asphyxiation, which means either Lori decided to strangle her, or Chad decided to strangle her, or perhaps someone we do not know yet decided to strangle her, but they're reporting it was always asphyxiation. So somebody had their hands around Miss Tammy Daybell's neck, most certainly. And they've had little to say ever since the first report in Good Morning America. He initially declined to speak, saying, "I can't comment on that issue." Chad Daybell later told the GMA he is just grateful for support. "We just have to wait for the legal process to work through now. I have to go. No further comment," he stated when asked about the safety of their kids. Before his arrest, Chad Daybell was spotted visiting the Hawaii jail yard where Lori Vallow was held on $5 million bail. Other people close to Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell have also disappeared and died under very mysterious circumstances since that time. So very interestingly, at this stage, they're now reporting that, Miss Vallow, she wore these extravagant kind of almost emerald rings, like these $5,000 rings. and it's getting to be very interesting. We're going to look at that. We're definitely going to go and look also at the pickaxe a little bit further. Thank you. The key elements that's always been here, right, all the way along for this whole interesting scenario with Lori Vallow, of course, is the pageantry element, right? And this strange way, as I was pointing out, that they would, both Chad and Lori Daybell to be exact, that they would dress up in kind of this whole, grandiose, fancy affair when it came to outfits. And this is a rare photograph of Lori Vallow actually dressing up in kind of this peacock sequin swimsuit again. And these photos are very challenging to find, which I discovered to be interesting, when it comes to this case. But she's dressed up in this, very elaborate, flamboyant outfit. And Chad, much the same, has this special pristine t-shirt and designer bags to take with him on this trip. And keep in mind, folks, the interesting aspect about all of this is it's happening and occurring simultaneously to when Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow first disappear. So we're seeing interesting things happen here with Lori being very concerned, right? Always extremely concerned with her own outward appearance. She dresses up again in a very, very revealing and clearly overly flamboyant type of polka dot laced dress. And she does this with both Charles Vallow and, oddly enough, with Alex Cox, even, at certain times, right? These are typical key issues in cases, but in here, it's much more pronounced, in ways that we wouldn't expect, because there's another rare photo here where Lori Vallow is seen in her special designer exercise outfit, which is kind of black with all of these little sequins around the sides of it, and Chad has much the same thing. And keep in mind, folks, this is directly after both of the children go missing. So Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow are missing, when the focus should clearly not be, all about that. It should be on them, shouldn't it? And here's a great photograph of them, that keeps that really at the forefront, keeps it in perspective. But it's like, there's elements of this where you can tell very clearly a kind of level of pageantry has been going on for some time. Here's Lori Vallow again, and ironically enough, she wears this same special triple stripe sequin swimsuit, right? Again, with Alex Cox, that she wears here with Charles Vallow. And, here's a close-up shot of this, which is a rare, not normally viewed Instagram photo. She's wearing this incredible, illustrious outfit, with these special sequins and everything for every part of the swimsuit. And this is directly after JJ Vallow and Tylee Ryan have disappeared. So it hazards to guess, at this point, for everybody involved. You can see here she was also a cheerleader and so on. That it really behooves anyone involved in this to wonder, why was she so focused on this pageantry, this whole outside appearance? And there was never really any attention paid to what truly matters, which is this, of course, right? And there's a lot of elements to that, most certainly. But I just wanted to make certain to get this aspect of the case really fleshed out for a moment here, because she loved to dress up in all of these elaborate costumes. And then you see Chad, he's out there wearing this elaborate red dress shirt and things like that, even when he gets on the plane and so on. But as for any kind of pictures, right, of Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow, those are nowhere to be seen. And these are all these photographs and interesting outfits, is what I will say, that were on their Instagram. And you couldn't even make this up. It was displayed all over their Instagram, everywhere, including when Lori Vallow would go pose at the beach and so on, during this exact time frame where presumably JJ Vallow and Tylee Ryan have disappeared and nobody knows where they went. And so it just brings up back the key component of who was watching, what was truly important to Lori Vallow. And indeed, it seems more and more that that's becoming very, very clear as you kind of peel this back, that more or less in most scenarios that you might say, Lori Vallow was more concerned with Lori Vallow than the actual children. I mean, I don't see how else, you could come to another conclusion at this stage. But it's like, what was going on, indeed? And the fact that she had, of course, her pageant of costumes on the Wheel of Fortune and so on. What was truly happening here in the background? And what I submit to you is the answers to that will be found in whatever the psyche is at the time for the couple, for both Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell, when they were on whatever their little adventure turned into that they were on. But in any case, it's a key issue because it tells us, what ultimately was important or not. And if Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow were truly not that important, that needs to be pointed out because the jury needs to hear that. They need to know that. Wouldn't you agree? And sound off in the comments down below what you see about this very interesting case and some of these very revealing details, most certainly. We always desire to hear, from you most of all. The key issue to remember here is the issue of importance. What did they value more? Was it family? Was it relatives? Was it these things that people normally need to be paying the closest attention to? Or was it themselves? And I submit to you right now, it seems that it was themselves. And oh my goodness, wait until we hear about loin fighting, because of course, it just always gets a little more interesting, doesn't it? All the exclusive details quite yet. Thanks to Fox 10 and a few others, we now have proof and photographs of kind of this pageant element that both Chad and Lori Daybell were very invested into, apparently. They kept a kind of set of attire and clothing and so on that are very, very contrary to what you would normally expect to see. And so what they discovered here that's interesting is almost directly after the kids went missing, on her computer were all these searches for a very special type of almost amethyst ring, a malachite style ring is essentially what they call that. And along with the ring, they also found confirmed searches for a whole set of very interesting dresses, gowns, and wedding gowns, apparently. Yes, you heard it right here first. Actual wedding attire. And these are the types of pageantry-based costumes and things that they, for some reason, that they were really getting heavily into. So here we go.
It's a story we've been following for 2 months now. 2 kids went missing less than a month after moving from their home in Chandler to Idaho.
And now their mother and her new husband did not report them missing. They're not cooperating with investigators. And the circumstances around their marriage are questionable at best. Fox 10's Justin Lum joining us live in the studio with the very latest on this. Justin?
At this moment, there are 3 deaths surrounding this couple being investigated by 3 different agencies. Lori Vallow's former husband and brother, and Chad Daybell's first wife. Meanwhile, the newlyweds are believed to be in Hawaii. One big question many have asked is when and where exactly did Lori and Chad get married? Now, we finally have the answer. Less than 4 months after her husband was shot and killed by her brother.
I got in a fight with my brother-in-law and I shot him in self-defense.
6 weeks since her kids went missing in Rexburg, Idaho. Within 3 weeks of his first wife's death, authorities now call suspicious.
The family did not want an autopsy, so they just went straight to the funeral home.
Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell got married here on a beach in Kauai. The date, November 5th. The ceremony starts with Lori and Chad dancing on the sand, posing for a wedding photographer. Walking along the beach dressed in all white, the couple visibly in love just 13 days after the memorial of Chad's first wife, Tammy. Timestamps on nearly 700 photos taken show this shoot lasted for 45 minutes. There's also a look at Lori's wedding ring, moments before Chad takes her hand in marriage. An officiant leads the ceremony as flower petals shaped in a heart surrounds husband and wife. Later, Chad is seen playing a ukulele, while Lori smiles, hula dancing. What would appear to any bystander as a joyful day for these two. But a few months later, back on Kauai after leaving Idaho, the couple is confronted about JJ and Tylee's disappearance.
So a very
There's people around the
flamboyant
country praying for your children, praying for you guys. Why
display
don't you give us answers?
when it came to attire
Photographer
and
who
clothing.
took these wedding photos made no
This is
mention
part of
of
that.
JJ or Tylee witnessing the marriage.
Without a single
So the
doubt,
question
right
remains,
here.
Where have Lori Vallow's kids been since September 23rd?
And of course, we now have more
Chad
answers.
and Lori are still believed to be on the island of Kauai. Authorities have not told us what exactly is next to getting more answers about the kids. If you want to learn more about this case, go to fox10phoenix.com/Vallow. Live in the studio, Justin Lum, Fox 10 News.
Justin, thank you.
People to make certain that they understand and recognize this element of pageantry, you know, where they really wanted to put this portrayal forward and this portrayal be put forth that they were this specific type of people, you know, that they had this specific type of dispensation and so on. And really they were the exact opposite of what they were portraying, because Chad Daybell, of course, was seen as like this great charismatic leader, right? That's what we're discovering now. And really he was just a snake oil salesman. He was an end times evangelist, is the correct and proper term for it. I mean, certainly he was a little more nuanced about it, right? He was certainly a little bit more careful and influential at times than like a Joel Osteen, for example, and similar people that have existed out there for a long time. But he was still, he could only keep the con up to a certain extent, you know. He was still clearly a snake oil salesman. And I think that that's what Rolling Stone and similar magazines are really trying to hint into that aspect without tipping their hand, showcasing how when you take away all the subtext, right, and all of these many layers, you still have Chad Daybell and Lori Daybell to a certain extent later as just these end times evangelists. And so it's an important point. Lori and her children had only recently arrived in Rexburg from Arizona, but really nothing was going right at the time, and she was making plans to move back to Arizona. She spoke to Kay Woodcock, JJ's grandmother in Louisiana, who had alerted the police that something might be wrong with her grandson. Like the woman was a splinter caught underneath her fingernails, or a gnat that she couldn't bat away. Like she had this kind of incline, this problem that she now had to take care of. It was true that Kay Woodcock was JJ's grandmother, but her particular relation to Lori was a bit more nuanced to explain. By November of 2019, Woodcock technically was Lori's ex-sister-in-law. Lori had been married to Woodcock's brother, Charles Vallow, for 13 years. And Charles and Lori had actually adopted J.J. Vallow, who are, in this case, Kay Woodcock's grandson, the son of her own son, when the boy was 2 years old because his birth parents were unable to care for the boy. Lori and Woodcock as well were not on good terms at the time. She did not disclose to the officers that Charles Vallow had been slain several months prior to this time period. She only told them that Vallow had died and had left no insurance policy for her or JJ, but had given everything over to Kay Woodcock instead. So there was a scheme to essentially steal the insurance, kind of an insurance fraud based scheme. And as you see clearly in some of the testimony in court, it was unsuccessful. It didn't go anywhere because that insurance got transferred as a matter of the default, lane that they have to issue things through. That insurance got transferred to Kay Woodcock in that particular instance. And after Charles' sudden death then, right, around the time when certain key issues were starting to crumble, in this family, Kay Woodcock became a greater presence in Lori Vallow's life, intrusive, needling even, asking questions that Lori did not wish to answer. She feared that Woodcock would take JJ from her. And so you're going to see a little bit more of that aspect to Lori, right? Because she was really always about pageantry. What kind of surface type of appearance can she put forward? What kind of pageantry can she make as an example for everyone to be able to see? And what kind of best foot can she put forward, really, to be able to keep her kind of dominant position, as they call it. And when we look at some of the clothing, I'm going to show just a little bit more of the type of clothing and attire that these people really wore, especially Chad and Lori in specific. You're going to see that that's a reason, that could be a reason, right, of why Lori Vallow was never able to get past that kind of insecurity that's there. Because you can't fool all the people all the time. And no matter what your appearance is or what best foot you put forward, so to speak, it's going to show up, and it's going to come out very loud and clear to everyone. And so she would always say, I'm a good person. I raised all of my kids and I've done everything that I'm supposed to do in life. But everyone is always causing me trouble right now. Lori told them about her daughter, Tylee Ryan. The only reason that they would move to Rexburg was for her to attend the BYU Idaho, just right up the hill from their town home. Before they left, the officers had asked about the men they saw earlier. Who was the guy with her brother, Alex Cox? His friend, she told them. Oh, that was Chad. Chad who? Oh, Chad Daybell. Chad Daybell, Ball clarified. The Chad Daybell? Mm-hmm. He's an official author, she beamed. So she sounds just a little bit exaggerated at certain times, right? A little bit unsure of herself, more like kind of a caricature almost from a book. at certain times rather than a real person. Because if that's right, yeah, you know, if she had been truly reflective of what she was saying at that time, she would realize and hesitate a moment, wouldn't she? She'd go, "Oh, Chad Daybell. Yeah, that Chad Daybell, who also has been very controversial in the news of recent times, especially after the Jerry Falwell, fallout with what literally fell away during the whole Jerry Falwell scandal. Didn't his wife pass away recently? Ball stumbled. I think so, she said. The officers said they were sorry for bothering her. They didn't mean to add to her problems at all. I'm sorry that people are constantly knocking on my door looking for me. I just don't want to be found right now. Before they left, she asked a question, one that seemed to be directed to no one, a question that had, unbeknownst to the officers, already been answered. What are they going to do with JJ and Tylee Ryan? There was no hint in her voice that something had been done. And then in comes Melanie. Once Melanie phones the police, this whole thing would be over. Lori said she'd pass the message along. The detectives thanked her, said goodbye, and Lori closed the door behind them. By the next morning, when no law enforcement came in either Idaho or Arizona, Melanie had not called the police, and so Detective Hermosillo returned to the beige townhome community with a search warrant. Inside, the officers found a half bottle of pills with J.J. Vallow's name on the label on the kitchen counter. Prescription risperidone, which treats irritability with autism and similar things. There were toys. There was a framed picture of Jesus that was on top of the refrigerator, and a mess of unoccupied hangers dangling from rods in empty closets. But Lori Vallow, she was nowhere to be found. And interestingly enough, this is kind of an exaggeration in a way because it comes from a actual book, okay, that's recounting the events as they transpire, but they call the book When the Moon Turns to Blood. And it was written, allegedly it was originally written by Leah Satya. But it's basically kind of a play-by-play rendition of what happens during the actual unfolding events when they encounter Alex Cox and Chad Daybell over at the Daybell apartments there, right there outside of Rexburg. You know, they looked at Chad, but neither man said a word. Hermosillo would then repeat himself and told the officers that his nephew was out of town. So it's a fascinating screed because although it's more of an exaggerated story in a way, as kind of Rolling Stone points out, right? It's from a book that's illustrating kind of the exact events as they transpired, you know. And one of those key things that it reveals to us, right, is that there were a lot of red flags. There were certainly a lot of warning signs. And it was very clear, especially with Kay Woodcock, that the warning signs were all over the place in regards to Daybell, you know, and then later to Lori Vallow as well. But, you know, right? You can't put on this whole facade of appearance is the moral of this kind of short story, because that facade will come back to bite you, and it will, you know, it will bite you very hard. And in this kind of particular case, Lori Vallow was putting on that kind of facade, that pageantry, with the way that she would present herself, you know, and how she would always speak without ever speaking out of turn, and putting her best foot forward and her best possible, you know, color, as it were, on the camera lens. And that didn't work out very well for her, did it? No, it certainly did not. When it came to exposing how Chad Daybell actually, does his business and the kind of fraud that Chad Daybell had been involved with in the past, right? Wouldn't you say that Chad, regardless of all of the amazing things that they said about him, wouldn't you say that he was a snake oil salesman to a large extent? Right? Yeah, certainly. And in a way that's almost more pronounced than Jerry Falwell, because Falwell, when he finally collapsed, he had his name and everything to write off of and so forth. Chad Daybell, even though he was very, very well known, and so was the Daybell clan, as it were, they didn't have anything to fall back on or fall back upon, because everything to do with the preparing a people cult and the group and everything, and certainly Elizabeth Prophet as well, were just, they sounded absolutely ridiculous to people who were on the actual street corner, right? To the people who mattered, that were in the downtown area, that would run the bookstore, that would run the local law office, and so forth. These people, they looked out of place. They looked almost obtuse in a way, right? And they were very, very noticeable. Remember, Mr. Ball even remarks to Lori Vallow later, is like, are you certain we're talking about the same person? That Daybell. That Daybell, Lori? And yes, it was indeed that Daybell who ran all of these interesting novels. But the problem with his novels and the similar novels coming out of that group is they didn't have a foundation. It was still all, in essence, the snake oil salesman. And in the same way that Lori Vallow became ultimately a snake oil saleswoman of her amazing clothes and her appearance and everything, about how colorful her hair and her shirts and so on have to look, the same exact issue could be applied to Chad Daybell and the other Daybells in a nutshell, because all they're selling, no matter how tantalizing it looked, was just more snake oil for the people who love to buy it and buy it in droves in that, low country part of Idaho. And there's definitely a story to be had about the low country there. And it'll be interesting to kind of touch upon some of those elements. But certainly, this has been a very interesting and very important educational experience. And there will be more to come. It was supposed to be a very
But the name on the order was Charles Vallow,
joyful
Lori's
moment.
husband, who had been shot and killed by her brother, Alex Cox, nearly 3 months earlier. I'm told Lori continued to use Vallow's Amazon account after he died, and a website history on the computer from which the ring was ordered also showed someone searching for wedding dresses the very next day on October the 3rd. Now, these dates might stick out to you because it was October 2nd that Lori and a man we believe is Chad Daybell visited this storage facility in Rexburg, Self Storage Plus. This is the same day that Lori and her companion dropped off a tire and a car seat, and on the way out, the man she's with gives her a friendly tap on her rear end. Also, on that same day, October 2nd, Brandon Boudreaux is shot at in Arizona. He hired a private investigator who believes Lori's now deceased brother, Alex Cox, shot at Brandon. So on that day, someone shoots at Brandon. Lori visits the Rexburg storage unit and purchases a wedding ring. Again, all this happening 17 days before Chad's wife, Tammy, dies at her home.
It's
and
amazing
a month before
because
Chad
it's no
Lori tied the knot
coincidence.
in Hawaii. One
they
other
would
thing,
do
the
that.
ring is
you
made
know.
of malachite. This is a mineral often called the stone of transformation, and it was mentioned in a document allegedly written by the husband of Lori's niece, Melanie Pawlowski. In the document, Ian Pawlowski reportedly describes what his wife Melanie told him about Lori's religious beliefs. And under one section called Spiritual Healing, he wrote, "Healing malachite solution balm. Malachite is said to have healing properties and administered by calling on it in a blessing." Now, Lori Daybell remains in the Madison County Jail on $1 million bail. Her next court appearance is scheduled for early May. As for the autopsy for Tammy Daybell, I just got off the phone with Fremont County Sheriff Len Humphreys. He tells me there is nothing new there and they are awaiting those results. Chad Daybell has not been charged or arrested on any crimes. Now, if you want to get up to date on all of our reporting concerning this case, go ahead and click on the link below. It will take you to a special section on our website. And of course, JJ and Tylee are still missing.
Yes, so justice for JJ and Tylee, most of all. This is an older article, but I wanted you guys, to recognize East Idaho News has truly been on top of this, done a phenomenal job. Each step of the way, including into the trial now. With the update being Tammy Daybell, of course, has been found with the cause of death being asphyxiation. But I wanted you to take a look at this to really get a feel of what we're talking about. Lori remains in the Madison County Jail. The major players and timeline and the disappearance has shifted again. And Lori married Chad Daybell on November 5th of 2019 in the Kuala, Hawaii area. And that was 3 weeks, actually less than 3 weeks, after Chad's 49-year-old wife, Tammy Daybell, was found deceased. Wedding photos obtained by Fox 10 have also shown Chad and Lori on the beach, laughing and holding each other, almost like that they were going on a trip or something to Disneyland. I mean, this is the kind of unbelievable thing that I wanted to remind you guys of. And they were wearing these interesting items of clothing that are very, very colorful, very extravagant in certain regards. And it's like, that can't be all of the story. That's the biggest reason, going back to this. It can't be all of the story. We think that maybe that's the only ring, that was purchased, but we don't have any way to verify that right now. And it's just interesting. It was a 4 sterling silver southwestern malachite gemstone. So if she was into all this pageantry like we're finding out, there most likely is other jewelry that was bought, and other items that we don't even know about. But what's fascinating is it says it was verified by 3 people close to the investigation and shows the ring was delivered October 7th to the townhome where Lori was staying on Pioneer Road. So she was basically going behind everybody's back, and I suppose even behind Chad's back at certain times, and buying all kinds of just amazing things, interesting trinkets. And around this time was when the attempted homicide, of course, occurs on Brandon Boudreau. So I find that to be a very, very interesting aspect to this. For those wondering, the main focus of what's going to be covered here, of course, is the stunning and quite shocking trial of Chad and Lori Daybell, of course, and some of the key items that are surrounding the issues that focus on, the elements of this case. And there's going to, because there's going to be, of course, the times where all we have is the audio, and the typed footage of what people are understanding from what's going on in court. But there's also supposed to, allegedly from what's been heard through the Vine, also be some photos, and camera footage of some parts of the trial as well at different times a little bit later. And so we're going to be covering most certainly every aspect of this case, this very interesting unfolding scenario. But I wanted you to know that they ordered quite a few items on Amazon. And that's something that they aren't really covering in the news yet. But it makes it clear that whatever they were getting ready for, is obviously going to be a quite flamboyant occasion, apparently. And so I'm just letting you know, this channel will of course also be covering some aspects of the Letitia Stausch trial as well. Just know, of course, that the main focus is going to be on the case that's taking place in Rexburg, Idaho, due to all the unfolding developments on this, of course, that have been going on since that time. And some of these ongoing developments right now most importantly right now, deal directly with the pickaxe. So we're going to go look at that. And thank you again. Continue to spread this out to the general public, raise the awareness on these key issues, and justice for Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow. Thank you. All the way along here. So here's some more very, very key information.
Probably seen the photos. These were obtained by Fox 10 News reporter Justin Lum. This is Chad and Lori on the beach on November 5th, just weeks after Chad's wife Tammy died in their Salem home. But check out this photo.
Now we know she was strangled,
Lori's finger the day
allegedly.
of her wedding. It's a size
as a cause of
sterling.
the cause of the homicide is now said to be asphyxiation for Tammy Daybell.
Silver southwestern style malachite gemstone, purchased on Amazon for $35.99. How do we know that? This screenshot right here. It was sent to me by a pretty reliable source and confirmed by 2 others. It shows Lori's wedding ring was ordered on Amazon on October 2nd.
And was shipped directly to Charles Vallow's apartment, apparently in Idaho.
"17 days before Tammy Daybell died in her Salem home. It was apparently delivered October 7th to the Rexburg home where
they gave the Todd and Mandy a chance to work out their plan, that they help them try and become, independent.
Okay.
Gave them to us.
Were Todd and Mandy ever able to regain custody of Kanan?
No.
Okay. How long did you have Kanan?
We got him in early July of 2012, and Charles and Lori got him in mid-February of 2013, which they were very glad. They were good with that, Charles and Lori.
Okay. And so JJ was living in Chandler, Arizona, and you were in Lake Charles, Louisiana.
Yes.
How often did you see JJ?
Every chance we could.
Okay, and how often was that?
We flew out there I know when they left with him in February of 13, we were out there less than a month later because we were having a very hard time detaching from him. We missed him really badly. But then anytime, it averaged about every 3 months when they were in Arizona that we were able to go visit.
Okay. After they adopted JJ, did Lori and Charles ever move from Arizona?
Yes, they moved to Hawaii.
Okay. Where in Hawaii did they move?
Princeville,
Okay. Do you know what island that's on?
Hawaii.
Okay. Once they...
Probably a week, maybe two. During that time frame, from like February 1st till the end of March, we were back and forth to Louisiana to Phoenix, with JJ, just busy trying to help Charles get things squared away.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I might have missed it. Did you mention a time frame in which you were going back and forth between Louisiana?
Yes, between February 1st of 2019 and through the end of March of 2019.
Okay. Did you stop going to Arizona?
Yes.
Why was that?
Because we moved Charles to Houston. Charles and JJ.
Okay. And when Charles and JJ moved to Houston, was Lori with them?
No.
Okay.
So there's an important point I wanted to point out here. A lot of people miss the reason for part of the conflict, right? And you can hear it in the tone of voice also was, right, during this time frame, when these specific issues start being brought up, the custody, that's a key component throughout the whole trial, actually. The custody changes. You can tell, you hear it in the inflection of the voice also. The custody for J.J. Vallow and presumably also for Tylee Ryan changes. They change address. They end up apparently, according to the statements that are coming out on the record, they end up all the way over in Texas. And it changes from being originally just right there in Arizona to moving clear across state, clear across at least one or more states to Texas state, which makes very, very interesting development in how things begin to unfold. It's a key thing, key detail. Thank you, and please comment on these key issues as they get brought up as well, for sure.
I made a copy.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd ask that the witness be allowed to look at those documents to refresh her memory.
Any objection? No, Your Honor. All right, you can go ahead and just indicate on the record what it is specifically you've looked at, and then after you've looked at that, put it away or turn it off if it's a device, and then we'll... Okay, so printed papers, it appears. You'll just look at those, and then once you've refreshed your recollection, set those aside, and then Mr. Wood will ask another question.
Have you had a chance to look at those?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall the numbers you had stored in your phone for Lori?
Yes.
What was the first one?
480-489-4652.
And what was the second?
480-692-9562.
Thank you. Mrs. Woodcock, do you recall the last time you saw J.J. Vallow in person?
Yes.
Where was that?
Lake Charles.
Lake Charles.
Do you recall when it was?
Right.
The weekend of May 17th. And I remember it vividly because we gave him a birthday party because his birthday was May 25th.
Okay. And did you, so you saw him at his birthday party?
Yes, and they spent
Where was that?
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Where was that?
At Mr. Gaddy's, a pizza place in town.
Okay, and And then did he spend that, was it a weekend?
Yes, they spent the weekend with us, and we gave them the party on the Saturday, and then the Sunday afternoon they left to go back to Houston.
And that was, just to be clear, that was the last time you saw him in person?
Yes.
After the last time you saw him in person, did you ever have contact with him again?
I think we may have had a phone call or two when he was with Charles, yes, but
okay,
that was about it.
All right. After Charles passed away on July 11th, did you ever have contact with him again?
Yes.
Tell me, well, do you remember how many times you had contact with JJ?
3 times.
Do you recall the first time you did?
Yes.
How did you have contact with him?
It was a FaceTime.
Okay. Do you recall when that was?
It was probably, let's see, June 11th, so probably around July 20th. Probably about a week or so after Charles's death.
Okay. Was there anything about that contact that stood out to you?
Yes.
What was that?
He normally had an iPad or a phone, and he would walk around and talk to Larry and me, and it was always so funny because he wouldn't hold the device to him. He would walk around and we'd see the ceiling in most of the places that they lived, but anyway, it was always funny. But yes, he would hold the iPad or the device and he would talk until he was ready to hang up.
And so that's how you normally communicated with him over
Yes.
FaceTime. On this specific incident that I asked you about, was there anything different about your communication with him?
Yes, he did not have the device in his hand. Somebody was holding it for him, and he normally, like I said, he normally always had it, but it was a very short call.
So, and here's the issue with that. It's a key piece of evidence because they're giving it, as testimony. The device was held in J.J. Vallow's hand, or the device, that was held, in Tylee Ryan's hand. But that's great and everything from the standpoint of a witness statement, from witnesses being able to recall or recollect certain events. However, one of the key issues we're going to get into, that you're going to discover with this, is we need to see actual footage. And hopefully there is some recorded footage that we're not aware of, probably at this stage, that was recorded on the device that shows, part of what happened with that cell phone or with that device. Because it says someone was holding it, right? But we can't just infer necessarily from a witness statement of exactly who might have been holding it, right? That's one of the key things we've learned all the way along with these cases and trials. We need more, although it's certainly very helpful and vitally important to have that witness statement and testimony. We need more. We need, in certain situations, we certainly need some kind of surveillance, or hopefully, if not a video call of when it happens, then something recorded, most certainly from one of the devices. And I'm feeling like that's just an element that we haven't seen struck into yet, but that there's actual recorded evidence, recording, in other words, from one of these devices. We have to remember, these are children. And these are very young children. These are I believe 15 and 7 years old, children. Or allegedly a little younger, actually, for for Tylee. If we go back and we look at everything and examine it again, and as far as them being children, they were very, very skilled at using devices. Even though, that they were extremely young, they knew kind of what they were doing when using devices. So there must be a record. That's one of the key things we're going to have to look at finally, right? A record that shows the exact time that the device was held. And who, most importantly, right? Especially going back from previous trials and from previous instances where we've revisited this exact issue. Who, exactly was holding the device, or who may have been holding the device away from J.J. Vallow and away from Tylee Ryan. Who was holding it at the time? It's going to turn into a crucial detail in all of this. And there are those who think that this is linked to maybe one of these cults, or apparently the cult of Scientology, or perhaps the cult of Doug Wilson. But again, folks, this is an entirely separate issue from that type of case, because this is a whole different style of religious organization. We have to remember they allegedly had more than 8 different bunkers or something originally in this organization that the Daybells were a part of. And one of the key questions, of course, that I've had starting to go into it and things like that is, who has the record, right, on that area of where the bunkers might have been placed? If there were indeed these bunkers that they're talking about that were like survival bunkers, who's holding the actual deed of record, or the land deed and leasing agreement, to show where some of these interesting tunnels and chambers and things truly were located? And that's going to be one of the key elements as well, no question. In particular with this, when what you have going into it is really very circumstantial at first, right? And then you have this pickaxe. That's one of the key issues I wanted to be certain everybody gets to hear, is the issue dealing directly with the pickaxe.
It was call, email, text, voicemail, any way we could, but I never got any response from her.
Okay. I'm going to take you back in time a little bit. Did you attempt to arrange with Lori for JJ to attend Charles's memorial service?
Yes.
Where was Charles's memorial service held?
In Lake Charles.
Okay. How did you communicate about that with Lori?
I don't remember if it was a phone call or a text, I don't know, but she had agreed that JJ could attend the memorial service.
Okay, and did you have a plan for picking him up and the logistics of that?
Yes, I bought plane tickets for me to go to Phoenix and pick him up, get him from her, and to fly back to Lake Charles and attend his memorial service, his dad's memorial service. And we were going to have him for a week, and then I was going to fly back to Phoenix with him and give him to Lori, and then fly home.
Okay. Did JJ end up attending his father's memorial service?
No, he wasn't allowed to.
Okay, and did you speak with Lori about that? Or communicate with Lori about that?
She wouldn't answer anytime I tried to reach out, she wouldn't answer me.
Okay. Was Lori at Charles's memorial service?
No.
Okay. Your Honor, I'm going to ask the bailiff to show to the defense and hand the witness a self-authenticating document.
All right, is there a courtesy copy for the court?
I don't have a courtesy copy for the court, Your Honor.
All right, well, go ahead.
It's in an evidence bag.
Okay. Is it on the exhibit list?
Yes.
I'd like to review that as well.
So they just placed this new key piece of evidence
This may be a good
into the evidence locking
the jury. I don't know if the court wants to do a sidebar first.
Locking the evidence in for the trial. They placed it into the lock bag here.
All right, that's
So
the
this is
case.
important.
Mr. Thomas, I'll suggest we'll take our lunch recess at this time and ACR 22-21-1624, State of Idaho versus Lori Vallow. We just completed the lunch break. There's been a witness that's been placed under oath. We'll have continued testimony there before we bring the jurors in and recall the witness. I will state, for a security concern for those in attendance, when we do have breaks, I'm advised that we're not going to permit you to leave personal effects, bags, etc. sitting on the benches when you exit the courtroom at any time, because we have to keep track of any of those items, so they need to be there with you. And that's been a request for me from security, so please take your effects with you at any time that you exit the courtroom. I'll also note that the continuing conduct orders are in effect for both this courtroom and the viewing areas where this is being simulcast. And at this point then, we'll have all rise for the jury and have them brought in once they're here. And then we'll have the witness brought in. Yep.
Yes.
What is it?
A Louisiana birth certificate for Kanan Todd Trahan.
Okay, and what is the birth date on that document?
May 25th, 2012.
Okay, and where's the birthplace?
Lake Charles, Louisiana.
And who are the listed parents?
Dennis Todd Trahan and Mandy Nicole Leger.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd ask that be published for the jury.
Any objection?
No objection, Judge.
All right, the exhibit may be published to the jury.
So there's real significance to the birth certificate record that hasn't really been fully delved into yet, but it's definitely key evidence. It's what you call inferred direct evidence, and it's key evidence that deals with actually the two children, because it relates to, I believe it relates to another child who is essentially their sibling, or whom is considered their sibling in that case.
No, I'm not sure why it isn't working. We had it going a minute ago.
I mean, that's what they're alleging. We don't know exactly what the birth certificate fully signifies yet, but it definitely deals with the two children. It seems to be, yeah.
Mrs. Woodcock, is that to your knowledge, is that the birth certificate that was received when Kanan was first born?
Yes.
Thank you. Your Honor, the state would ask to hand the defendant State's Exhibit 2. It's another self-authenticating document. While it is the document itself, the state did prepare a courtesy copy for court and counsel.
All right, the witness can be handed the exhibit, and I'll review the courtesy copy.
Cox. Thank you. Your Honor, I'd ask that what's been marked as State's Exhibit 4 be handed to the witness. Courtesy copy for the court and defense.
Very well.
Could it pertain to how or the exact date and time
Mrs. Woodcock, do you recognize
that the children disappeared? I don't know, you know. It could. It certainly could, you
What
know.
does it purport to be?
It's a piece of evidence.
Our beautiful
That's a key
grandson,
issue.
JJ.
Is that a... Did you take that picture?
I did.
Is that a true and accurate representation of J.J. Vallow?
Yes.
Your Honor, I ask that State's Exhibit 4 be entered into evidence.
Any objection?
May I point here in aid of an objection?
You may.
Ms. Woodcock, you indicated that you were the one who took this photograph.
Yes.
Do you know when you took it?
Probably. He was probably 5 or 6 then, maybe 7. It was probably. Hang on, let me. I can't remember exactly when. We took a lot of pictures of it.
Where was it taken?
And my husband's pickup truck.
And, I mean, I guess, like what city?
Lake Charles, Louisiana.
And who else was there when this photo was taken?
Well, it looks like the angle I took it from was the front passenger seat, so Larry was probably with us.
Okay. You don't have any specific recollection of the day you took this?
No, but this has always been one of my favorite pictures.
Okay.
Of him.
And I have no objection to the admission of State's Exhibit 4.
All right, Exhibit 4 is admitted.
Your Honor, may I publish it for the jury?
You may.
Mrs. Woodcock, who is that, again, who is that a picture of?
JJ.
Okay. Is this the JJ that we have been speaking about this morning?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Mr. Wood, just to clarify our exhibits here, I'm holding a courtesy copy, but it's got what looks like the State's Exhibit sticker original. I want to make sure I don't have the original exhibit, not a copy.
I think you do have the original, Your Honor.
Okay, let's go ahead and sort those out. So I'll hand you my copy, and I'll ask the bailiff to bring me the other back. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mrs. Woodcock, you, before we broke for lunch, you had testified about Charles Vallow dying and trying to make contact with JJ, correct?
Yes.
So this is true.
At any time,
They're discovering that he
after the
tried
death
to
of
make
Charles
contact
Vallow,
with
did
his
you become
grandson
concerned about the whereabouts of
and
JJ?
and with Tylee also.
Why?
Because Lori didn't want him anymore.
Were there any other reasons you were concerned about his whereabouts?
I didn't know. I was having trouble reaching Lori and her keeping in touch. Letting us keep in touch with him.
Okay. Did you ever reach out to law enforcement about your concerns about JJ?
Yes.
When did you do that?
My brother died on July 11th, and we found out about it July the 12th. And we were in Lake Charles, and he was deceased in Arizona, in a Chandler. And
Such a tragic,
we
tragic
found
story.
out Friday afternoon. That was on the 12th, and then we talked to a detective then, and Larry and I flew out the next day to Phoenix so we could meet with the detective, and he met with us the next day, that Sunday afternoon, and our first question to the detective was, we are so worried about JJ, and also, did he see what happened to his dad?
So you spoke with law enforcement very soon after your brother's death?
Yes.
After you first spoke with law enforcement, you did have occasion to FaceTime with JJ, as you testified earlier, correct?
Yes.
After your last FaceTime with JJ on August 10th, did you ever speak with law enforcement again about JJ's well-being or his whereabouts?
Yes. Numerous times.
Okay.
Your Honor, at this point, I'm going to renew my objection pursuant to Idaho Criminal Rule 16b6. She's indicating that she met with law enforcement on numerous occasions. I've received some, but I don't think I've received all of those communications.
Response. Your Honor, the defense has received multiple reports, and I think that those would indicate all of the witnesses' statements about.
And I agree with some who say, just even thus far,
Considered the record that I've got on
this trial has been quite riveting.
cited 16B6,
Yeah,
I'll
no
overrule
question.
the objection.
So hopefully as it continues to kind of grow
575 Pioneer Road,
and move
apartment
forward,
175 in
it
Rexburg,
really,
Idaho.
really picks
Do
up
you recall
speed
the date of
and
that
more
delivery?
attention.
It
Most certainly.
was, probably a couple of days before November 8th. I don't remember specifically.
Okay. But it was after July 11th, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And that delivery, was that associated with a specific company?
It was with Amazon.
Okay. What did you do after you saw that notification?
I called Brandon Boudreau was first, and then law enforcement, and I do believe I talked to our private investigator as well. I talked to numerous people that day regarding it because I was shocked at what I found.
Okay. Did you look further into that Amazon account?
Yes, I got into the browsing history in the Amazon account, and I saw that there was browsing for a beach wedding dress, a bathing suit, men's large size, I think it was large, white linen top and pants, and malachite wedding rings. And there were a couple of little odd-man things, I believe, maybe flip-flops or something.
So it really sounds
Was
like
there a date associated with that browsing history?
they were not just
Yes.
going out
What
on
date
the
was
lam.
that?
October
Yeah.
2nd,
They were going
Of
to
what
Mardi
year?
Gras,
2019.
Was
to
there
a kind
reason
of
that caught your
pageantry
attention?
style Mardi Gras
Yes,
event.
because I
Literally.
had learned before that Tammy Daybell had passed away on October the 19th, and this was her looking at wedding rings and wedding stuff on October.
I'm going to stop you there.
Sorry.
When you said she was looking at wedding rings, who did you believe was looking at wedding rings?
Lori.
Okay. And was there anything else about that browsing history that caused you concern or caught your attention?
Not thinking of anything else.
Okay.
No.
Did you become aware at any time that the Rexburg police were looking for JJ?
Yes.
Did you ever meet with the Rexburg police?
I met with them in January 2020.
Okay. Did you ever go to Rexburg, Idaho?
Yes.
Prior to this situation, had you ever heard of Rexburg, Idaho?
Never.
Did you put out a reward in aid of the search for JJ?
Yes, at the advice of a FBI.
Okay. Did you ever do
I'm going to
interview?
object to relevance on that last question. I'm going to ask that it be stricken for the record.
Well, the answer came before an objection was lodged, so it's not timely, so it's overruled.
Did you ever do interviews with news outlets to publicize the search for JJ?
Objection relevancy.
What's the relevance, Mr. Wood?
Just to lay the foundation of what Mrs. Woodcock was doing, looking for a missing child, Your Honor.
The objection's overruled. You can answer.
When we went in January of 2020, the media had learned of the story of the kids missing, and we reached out. Every media outlet was all over this, and we talked to every outlet we could. We appeared on talk shows. We did everything we could to raise awareness for the kids missing. Atmosphere that we had to offer in ways of, stimulating a kid, bringing them to the park, or going out with their friends, or him having friends over, just things like that. Lori and Charles just seemed to have a better place. They were a better placement for him.
Right. Okay. And what you wanted was the best thing for Kanan or JJ, right?
That's what we thought. Yes.
Okay. And you mentioned that Larry had a brother who was raising an autistic child. JJ or Kanan or JJ, they were also autistic, correct?
I don't think he was diagnosed at that time, but he did have disabilities.
Okay. But you learned later that JJ was diagnosed with autism?
Yes.
Okay. You talked a little bit on the with the prosecuting attorney about you working with Charles when he had a split with Lori, right?
Yes.
And that happened, he filed for divorce in February of 2019. You remember that?
Yes.
And that's when you flew out to
it was before he filed, I believe, but it was right at that time.
Okay, all right. But he ended up pulling that back or quashing that suit, right?
Yes.
So they were going to get back together?
Charles was hoping, but Lori was nowhere around.
Okay. And that was in February?
Yes, he just couldn't go through it at that time.
And at that time, Charles had taken JJ with him to Houston, right?
At the end of March, yes.
The end of March.
Okay. Got everything hooked up, and
Sure. What do you mean by divine intervention? What do you mean?
Just God's hand.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Mr. Wood, do you have any redirect?
Very interesting.
State has no further questions, Your Honor.
Okay. Thank you. That'll conclude your testimony. You may go ahead and return down to
Very
the
interesting
gallery.
perspective there.
I'll give you a moment to do that, and then I'll ask the state if they've got another witness.
When I first, right after I was married, I moved down to Arizona. I actually lived with Lori for a while, and her husband, Charles.
Okay. So when you say Lori, do you see the person you recognize and knew through marriage as Lori Vallow here in the courtroom today?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Can you please point her out and describe an item of her clothing?
She's sitting over on my right with glasses on.
Okay. Your Honor, may the what table, just so that the record's real clear?
The second table.
Okay. How many people are at it?
There's 3.
Okay. Your Honor, may the record reflect he's identified the defendant, please?
Yes, that's reflected now in the record.
Thank you. Now, you said you'd spent time in Ms. Vallow's home with Charles, correct?
Yes.
All right. And at that time, was he her husband?
Yes.
All right. How well did you get to know them?
Very well. You know, we just spent a lot of time together.
Okay. When you say we, what does that mean?
Me and my family. My wife at the time and my children.
Okay. Did you get to know her children, Ms. Vallow's children?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. What were their names?
There's Colby, Tylee, and JJ.
When you say you got to know them, did your kids also interact with their cousins?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we did. They spent a lot of time together. My oldest, Braxton, was pretty close with JJ. I think, JJ looked up to him a lot, and they spent a lot of time together.
So would they spend any time in each other's homes?
Yeah. JJ wasn't he wasn't super interactive as he had autism, so he wasn't always like incredibly interactive, but he seemed to love hanging out with my kids, and specifically Braxton and Brighton. As he got older, he started to be able to interact a little more, and he would always he kind of had 2 fascinations. One was with traveling. He always said everybody always got him suitcases. He had suitcases everywhere. And the other was coming and hanging out with Braxton. He would always ask for that, and they had a great time when they spent time together.
And what about Tylee?
I spent a lot of time with Tylee as well. I watched her grow up. I met her when she was just little, and then got to watch her kind of grow into a teenager.
Did you have any special sort of religious connection to Tylee?
Yeah. In our church, when you turn 8, you can get baptized if you choose. And so when she turned 8, she decided to get baptized, and for whatever reason, Charles wasn't comfortable doing the baptism. And so they had asked me, and I of course said yes, I would be honored to baptize her.
And you say in your church, what church is that? What's your faith?
I go to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Okay. And was Tylee baptized into that church?
She was, yes.
Okay. Were you and your wife members of the Church of Latter-day Saints?
Yeah, we were.
Okay. And to your knowledge, what about Mr. and Mrs. Vallow?
Yes, as well.
Okay. Did you, what about the relationship sort of between that you observed between Melanie Boudreau and Lori Vallow. What was that like?
Interesting, yeah. We're going to go into this element of it.
You know, Melanie, she kind of had like an affinity towards Lori. She always kind of, she looked at her kind of less like an aunt figure and almost more like a mom figure. She was always wanting to be like her.
Did you get along with Charles?
Yeah, really well. Charles and I both had a passion for sales and business, and connected well in that. And you know, we just both loved our families, and so it was very easy for us to spend time together.
So it wasn't uncommon that the Boudreaux and the Vallows would get together and get along?
Yeah, we would. You know, there was years where they lived by us, and we would usually see each other maybe once a month or more. And then there was times when they lived further away, but we would travel to each other's homes, stay in each other's homes when we went. It wasn't uncommon to spend a week, you know, or more at each other's homes.
Did you spend holidays together?
Yes.
Okay. What was the last Christmas that the Boudreaux and the Vallows spent together?
That would have been in 2018.
Okay. Was that a typical Christmas for the two couples?
No, it was definitely different at that point.
Why?
When you get really close with people, you kind of become comfortable and you let your guard down, and you know, your body language is more relaxed and more comfortable, and it just, everything kind of, I don't know how to, you know, it can be so fluid. You can see each other and pick right up where you left off. But everybody feels like they know everything about each other, almost like it's just, you know, you're so, you know each other so well that it's like memory, if you will. But in that one, it was very, well, there was Melanie Gibb who was there, who I'd never met before, and never heard anything about.
So let me stop you there and let me ask. So you said it wasn't the same as before. Were there other people there for this holiday?
Yeah, Melanie Gibb was there with her family, who I didn't really know her, and the rest of us were all, it just didn't feel, we didn't feel close. The body language was very, in the way that the conversations flowed and everything just felt very distant.
Now, around this time, were you and your wife active in your church or in your ward?
Yeah.
Okay. Had you been active with the Vallows in your faith?
Could you maybe expand on that?
Sure. Had you and the Vallows shared that faith and shared activities at church?
Yeah, we definitely had done things at church together.
Okay. And did your wife's and/or let's take it one at a time. Did your wife's activity in religious events increase around this time, around that Christmas?
Yeah, a little bit before it actually, but
can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So when we first got married, my wife's kind of religious level was kind of low. She didn't enjoy going to church. It wasn't something that she. It was more me pushing going to church. I felt like I got like a little bit of a benefit from it, and she didn't really enjoy it that much. And so for most of our marriage, it was kind of me pushing going to church. But kind of in the fall of that year.
We're talking 2018.
Yeah, sorry. In the fall of 2018, she started getting really passionate about going to church and about different ideas within the church. She started going to these things she was calling firesides.
When you say calling firesides, are firesides within the LDS faith, are those a common practice?
So in the LDS faith, the way our setup is organized is our congregation is called a ward, and there's usually some leaders inside the ward, and then there's a bigger congregation called a stake, and inside of that, usually ecclesiastical leaders organize the regular Sunday events, but you also occasionally will have like they call them firesides, but like a special event that focuses on something around our belief. And in this case,
were the events that your wife attending called firesides sort of part of the organized part of your church?
No, and that's I guess what started kind of sticking out to me was she would go to these things that she was calling firesides, but they weren't put on by the church. They didn't have any ecclesiastical connection, like there wasn't anything like that, but they were using that term, and she was coming home with kind of different ideas of what she was going to do to be a faithful member of the church.
Okay. Was the defendant at some of these firesides?
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Did Charles
so Lori
go to any
Vallow
of
was
these
possibly
fireside
some of
talks?
these interesting events.
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And were you invited?
No, I had a discussion with Melanie, and she told me that these were her thing, and she didn't want me to go, and it was very clear that I wasn't welcome to come.
To your memory, who was attending some of these, extra church activities?
Besides Melanie and Lori.
Besides Melanie and Lori.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. It sounds like he doesn't have information as to who was there. Any information that he would have gotten would have been hearsay.
I'll sustain that. I think there's inadequate foundation.
Were you aware of who attended some of these events?
Not in the present, but afterwards, yes.
Okay. Did any of the people who later went to those told you they had attended those?
Yeah, I had a conversation with Melanie Gibb later where she told me she went to those.
Okay.
Again, it's hearsay.
And that will be stricken as hearsay.
Okay.
A statement of what another said.
But you weren't allowed to go to these talks?
Correct.
All right. And when you say some of the ideas your wife came back with, did they center around particular topics?
Yeah, the things that were, she felt a need to go to the temple every single day, which is a little bit extreme, and like in our faith, we believe in going to the temple, and I think regular attendance can be good. It's something where you go and kind of practice ritualistically like your faith and show God that you're trying to keep promises to Him. And so it's a good thing to do, but
is it unusual to go every single day?
Very, and it got even more extreme. Like she would have to go during like our family trips to Disneyland or things like that just were very, very overwhelming. She had to focus on this idea that like the world could end soon, and we had a disagreement about buying $10,000 worth of storage right away.
Yeah, very interesting. So they were really focused on something else, weren't they? Not the typical church-related activities, but more of the world of prepping, preparedness meetings, different types of theologies maybe that are considered outside of that belief system that was found essentially connected to the studio apartment that was in Rexburg, Idaho, where they also discovered and recovered a interesting storage locker that had a lot of things located in it. And so Detective Hermosillo essentially found here in this compound, this condo compound here, that's kind of off of this interesting place in the Princeville area of Hawaii. They found a lot of firearms, including muzzle flashes, silencers, allegedly rifle type of weapons and other assault-style pistols. And it was described as a very interesting scene because they were unaware of, for what purpose would all this be here. And some of the alleged weapons and other paraphernalia were found also registered in Idaho. So the question that they had come up a lot is, well, if Chad Daybell had, a number of these items and they were keeping them also in storage, and of course, then there's a spare tire that they all comment about. Who's to say that a lot of these weapons don't also belong to Lori, as well. And so they're looking very carefully at certain things. They're examining the fingerprint information now, and it's just becoming more of a interesting story as they really question this. Because if she knew, next to nothing as she originally claimed about it, then why? What is the need for all of these assault weapons? Yeah, and these other interesting weapons actually in this condo area where they end up finding this stuff. And then what about these interesting reports left behind regarding the books? Yeah, well, and I'm sure that's something that a lot of people would like answers to. We don't quite know exactly why it is yet, but they found that evidence, and they found a lot of that convincing evidence, and also weapons that appear to have been used by Chad as well as Lori in kind of the area around the storage vicinity of Rexburg, over there in Idaho too. And a guinea suit, of all things, and a few other key pieces of evidence that'll be covered in the next part 2, of course. But I just wanted you to know, yeah, it was a bizarre scene for them to enter there and find all of these silencer weapons and different, almost army-style gear inside there. That if this was really all belonging to Alex Cox or something, there should be a registration certificate, and clearly it probably doesn't belong to him. And it does seem to lead back to Lori and Chad again, which is not a great look. Certainly not a great look for the jury. And that's all for right now on the Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow case. I wanted to make certain that you saw some of those key photographs that were towards the end of this. I kept it to the extent that I kept it because about an hour length is usually normally okay for a video like this. But in part 2, you will, of course, you will see more of the brief from the trial of day 1. Just a bit more of that. And then we'll look at the actual physical evidence, and that is silencers, outfits, allegedly even a hazmat suit looking type of ghillie suit of some type for some reason that was in the apartment and also over there in the storage when they were going through different things. So I've included those photos you see at the end of the video for very good reason, so you recognize what the house and so on actually looked like. This is where Tylee Ryan and J.J. Vallow were last seen. And unfortunately, it was the place that they were last seen from that point onward, not counting the alleged Yellowstone comments that are still coming out, sightings and so forth. So be certain to continue to spread the word, and we will get the update. We'll get everything up to date on this most important case right now. Thank you again.